Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tammy McCullough. I work for the University of Minnesota Extension, and I had the pleasure of working beside the one and hopefully only long-standing planning committee for the National Urban Extension Conference. As the program chair, I worked alongside many colleagues across the nation, and I'm so appreciative of all the support that they provided to make this conference come to be what it is. So before introducing our panelists for this plenary session, I wanted to give you a brief overview of today's program and some of the exciting highlights ahead. So after this session, we will have the first conference's breakout sessions, which are organized in those 6 tracks that align with the NUEL's 5 focus areas, plus a track focused on extension administration. We will also have a keynote by Phil Thompson on the future of cities and urban collaborations, followed by more breakouts after lunch. At 2:45 to 4:45 this afternoon, we will have a special portion of the program called Community Connections. Now, this is a new feature to this conference, but content in this portion will all focus on how extension can become a more effective at engagement and collaboration with the communities we serve. We will have a keynote address and then the opportunity to either attend panel presentations or these small group workshops. And the small group workshops were things that you had the opportunity to sign up for last night and today in the back of the room. So to help keep the workshops small and interactive, we wanted to keep the sign-ups going. And then you also, if you're not interested in attending those community connections workshops, you can do a panel presentation. And everyone is welcome to attend the Community Connections Reporting Out session, which will summarize the highlights from those workshops. Some of tomorrow's highlights are the DEI plenary session, and you can submit questions for that session ahead of time to the panel, and you can either use this Whova app or you can use a link on the conference website agenda so that the panelists can tailor their comments and resources to what is most useful to all of you. Also tomorrow we will have the community site visits to Camden and Philadelphia and Trenton, New Jersey. And there are still some spots available, and if you're interested, you can stop by the registration desk just right outside the door to check in on what is available. And Thursday, we'll have the regional network meetings over breakfast. These are open to everyone, and it's a great opportunity to connect with people in your region. And the conference will close with an announcement about the next conference location. Dun, dun, dun. This is going to be a great week. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Session 1 speakers for the National Urban Extension Leaders ECOP Leading Edge Dialogue Plenary. So Ruemenapp, who we all got introduced to last night, and if not before, she is the Extension Outreach Specialist at Michigan State Extension and serves as the chair of NUEL and the Northeast Urban Extension Leaders. Brent Hales is the Associate Dean and Director at Penn State Extension and serves on ECOP, the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy. So he is the liaison to NUEL for ECOP. And Bill Hoffman, right here, works in the United States Department of Agriculture, serving as the Chief of Staff for NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And then we also have Julie Fox, who will provide an update after the plenary about the Special Urban Journal edition of JHSE. And Julie Fox is from The Ohio State University. So welcome to Marie, Brent, Bill, and Julie.
Thank you so much, Tammy. The sound last night was a little off. How is it today in this room? Great. Okay, good. I couldn't compete with the fish last night, right? Who could compete with the fish? That was great. Like dinner, I had a colleague tell me, and I thought this was really cool, that he felt like Superman with like the sharks in the background. So it was cool venue. So you guys, this morning I'm pleased to be here to present the Leading Edge Dialogue session for this particular conference. This is a session we started in 2019 at the Seattle conference, where we have a session to try to push our thinking, to look at future trends, and to talk about, where, in this case, we will be going in the future. And an opportunity for all of you to get involved with that. So we're going to be reimagining our future together this morning through this national extension priority issue programs that NUEL led, and then the program action teams and implementation teams that ECOP have put together. So the first thing I want to do is I want to connect some dots, okay? So in 2019, the National Urban Extension leaders at their biannual or semi-annual steering committee meeting was reviewing priorities, and from the National Urban Implementation Plan for the National Extension, excuse me, I'm messing up here, for the National Urban Extension Initiative, we have an implementation plan. And so we were reviewing those priorities and setting our priorities for the year. And we had been thinking about and came to the realization that it was time in that plan to really do an issue identification of urban issues across the country so that we could begin to connect more around program nationally. And so many of you in this room were probably part of that. And we decided to do that because we needed to establish really the relevance and demonstrate our impact and look at really advancing strategically our work that we do in urban settings, okay? So we, throughout 2020, we worked basically to build the capacity to take action as a system through this issue process and leverage new and existing resources and advance and share basically the agenda for those, and looking at whether there was a possibility to build collective impact around a set of issues. Through that process, NUEL is interested really in building stronger programs and connections and recognizing really the interdisciplinary opportunities, and really look at urban audiences and the practice and the unique needs of them, as well as forming partnerships not only within Extension but external to Extension with private and public entities. And we're also interested in exploring options beyond USDA for funding for urban and beyond actually government. And so just basically looking at strengthening the learning communities also internally within Extension around the areas of programming that you all work in cities across the country. So we conducted this issue identification process. We did it through our regional networks. So many of the regions had surveys that people filled out. Others did sort of more of a focus group conversation. We looked at all of those. We actually had regions prioritize them, and from them there were 4 programmatic priority areas that came out, and we are defining these as sort of areas that Extension is, should, or could be working in urban spaces. As you can see, the first area was food access, security, and equity. And this area really encompassed the full range of food systems and nutrition issues and the full continuum of education that would be needed in order to move urban agriculture forward. So that would include anything from, really sort of serious production agriculture occurring in urban spaces, all the way to people growing gardens in their side lots or in their flower beds or wherever for food. Okay, so that full continuum. The second area that came out of that issue process was urban sustainability. This was looking at like green infrastructure, water quality, climate impacts and adaptation, urban planning, and more. The third area that was identified was the social emotional health and well-being of urban residents, with a heavy emphasis around mental health and youth. The fourth area wasn't programmatic. It was really internal to extension. Actually, sorry. Let me back up. There was an audience throughout all of these that became a priority, and it was youth. And it was looking at careers and skill development and building life skills, and really a lot of focus around STEM or STEAM activities, and then a variety of health issues. Then, the fourth issue really wasn't programmatic or an audience. It was the extension workforce that is working in urban spaces, and concerns that staff had or challenges that they had that the extension system they felt should be looking at more fully. And that included professional development, specifically for staff who are working in urban spaces, a variety of issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then competencies for urban staff, and looking at how those are and should be different maybe than some other geographic spaces. Okay, so those were the four areas, and we began moving forward with them. And we introduced those and your comments to ECOP, which stands for the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy. It's the closest thing that the Extension has to a governing board. It's a group of chosen representatives of Extension directors that come together and provide some leadership and strategic direction for the organization. And so this information was presented to them, and at the same time, they were kind of doing something a little different, and I'm going to let Brent talk to you about that, because at this point, we have decided to roll those into this process, and Brent's going to share why.
So good morning. In 2020, the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy came together. And let me give you just a little bit of background. Each region, there are 5 regions: West, North Central, Northeast, South, and the 1890 regions have representation on ECOP. And the chair position for ECOP rotates around. So currently ECOP is being led by Wendy Powers out of the University of California Extension, and it changes in the fall, and the next ECOP leader will be Bev Durgan from the University of Minnesota Extension. And so we come together several times a year, and in late 2020 and early 2021, ECOP identified 7 priority issues, and that was that under your leadership, Chris, or previous? Previous. So Chris Watkins from Cornell also is on ECOP. What other ECOP representatives do we have here? Any others? Raise your hand. So Al is on ECOP as well. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about ECOP and what we do, how we work collaboratively, please talk to one of us. We also have several reformed offenders in the group, former ECOP members, that are also a wealth of knowledge with regards to what we do and how we do it. But these 7 priority issue areas were outlined in these discussions as these are really areas that all of our states have in common, issues that we can coalesce around and provide feedback and receive feedback from commodity groups, from governmental organizations, from NGOs. And these are also important priority areas for many of our governmental partners. And so when you look at the 7 core issues, hopefully you can see yourself in at least one of those, because that was also one of the other reasons why these particular priority issue areas were raised. So ECOP's goal was to initially, so I also head up I'm the chair of the program committee. And initially when the program committee, and for many years after it was set up, became a parking place for people that they didn't quite know what to do with on ECOP. But since it's evolved in the last few years to really drive forward, because our goal has been to build a program-focused initiative or program-focused issue areas that will push cooperative extension nationally. And so the program committee created program action teams around each one of these issue areas to, number one, identify gaps relevant to extension programming, identify areas of greatest impact or identify trends, help identify measurements of acceleration, and then focus cooperative extension interests on identified actions or solutions. And so as these teams were being set up, the goal was to not only engage extension directors, but also JSEP organizations and groups like the Extension Foundation. We also have representation from NIFA. So each one of the issue areas, each one is now become a program action team. And these program action teams have a liaison from USDA NIFA who sits on it, gives us guidance, direction, and also points us towards potential either impending resources or opportunities for creating common asks around these. Additionally, the goals were to help tell the story of extension around these priority areas, help identify where impacts are being accelerated, empower educators to align with these actions and their strengths, allow for some longitudinal analysis, and then to create continuity and coordination in programming. For a long time, the general notion was that programs were an afterthought of ECOP. And so this is really pushing forward to the forefront our programs, because our legislators want to know what's the return on investment. Our legislators want to know what's going on in their areas. And so by focusing on these priority action areas, now the program action teams, we're pushing that ahead. So each one of these is chaired by a director administrator and often has collaboration with someone actually doing the programs or a program leader from the state. So our Urban Ag and Food Systems program action team, I chair and co-chair with Marie. But that, if we were to couch all of urban extension under Urban Ag and Food Systems, we'd be missing a huge swath of opportunity. And so as a result, we have developed steering committees to help us push forward these areas, and they represent not only extension, but also governmental partners and non-governmental partners. And they help us identify and line out not only what are the highest priority areas, but also, again, potential funding opportunities. So Marie and I presented, along with the other program action team leaders at PILD in April in DC, with our NIFA partners for the representatives that were there, and talked about not only what's going on, how to get involved, but also potential funding areas for these efforts. So the PATs, or program action teams, are, again, this is sort of the general organizing around these issue areas. And each one of these is focused on then implementation efforts, specifically around areas of interest, priorities, to make sure that we're encompassing all of those areas within the action teams. So how can you get involved? Well, quite honestly, we need your engagement. We need your involvement. And so this will be available, by the way, not only via the HUVA app, but also after the conference is over, you all will have access to these slides, so please don't feel like you have to try and capture everything. So again, each one of these is led by a director. So Damona Doy out of Oklahoma State and Rachel Wellborn out of the Southern Rural Development Center head up the Broadband Access and Digital Skills Program Action Team. Climate Mitigation and Resilience and Adaptation, Jason Henderson out of Purdue, with Eric Norland out of NIFA, lead that. Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Vonda Richardson and Rachel Wellborn, lead that program action team. Ivory Lyles at Oregon State leads the Economic and Workforce Development program action team. 4-H Positive Youth Development is currently led by Gilbert Rankin and Ed Jones. We're experiencing some turnover as folks rotate off ECOP, and so these are going to stay living action teams. So the heads may change, but ultimately this is the direction that ECOP is going. Roger Ruemenapp is leading the Health Equity and Wellbeing team, and this particular program action team has evolved into an action team. It was an initiative under ECOP, but has now just recently become the 7th. And then again, Marie and I lead the Urban Ag and Food